Is a Baltimore literary journal, and when I read them I was so moved by the accounts of ordinary people telling about unbelievable events that happened right on the streets that I travel on every day. The stories seemed to me more powerful than the very best poems and literary fiction that I had read in a very long time, and moved me to think of the city that I've grown to love in a new way. I heard the stories read aloud at a performance at the Baltimore Book Festival, and at that moment I knew that their power was amplified many times over by being read aloud, and I knew that they needed to see a wider audience, and I suggested to Kendra Kapelke, the editor of Passenger, that we bring the reading here, and she agreed. The stories are the accounts of what happened in Baltimore 41 years ago, in the days after 39-year-old Martin Luther King was shot on a hotel balcony in Memphis after participating in a march to support the sanitation workers' efforts to obtain equal pay. The seeds of his march were sown 20 years earlier when King, as a college freshman, discovered the writings of Henry David Thoreau and his ideas about nonviolent civil disobedience. At 25, King became a pastor in the Baptist Church. In the following 14 years, he led many nonviolent protests that were instrumental in changing the laws affecting access in this country to education, voting, public transportation, among other things. In the years leading up to his death, King focused on the Vietnam War and challenged President Lyndon Johnson by arguing that military spending, rather than spending funds on alleviating poverty, would lead this country to a spiritual death. 1968 was, as we just saw, a tumultuous time of shifting values and altered avenues to power. King's leadership made possible some of these shifts. It made them possible, and it also made them dangerous. His airline flight to Memphis for that sanitation workers' march was delayed because of a bomb threat. His own home had been firebombed years before. And on the night before his murder, King said in a speech captured on that fuzzy photograph you saw, he said, "I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." A prophetic acknowledgement of the personal dangers inherent in the pursuit of freedom. When the news of his assassination spread, riots erupted in many cities and continued for many days. The Baltimore riots began in earnest on April 6, 1968. Hundreds of National Guardsmen camped at the Armory just a few blocks from the Dolphin Building. On April 7th, almost 2,000 federal troops arrived in Baltimore and set up a temporary Army camp in Druid Hill Park. These troops marched down Mount Royal Avenue. Students from MICA painted their message of grief on the roof of the station building, and the city west and south of our school was burning. Many people ask why it's necessary to revisit the events of April 1968. Haven't the injustices of this time been repaired by acts of law or by the election of President Obama? Is there anything newsworthy about an event extensively covered last year? That surprised me, as if we are in the clear as long as we cover something once, as if it's not newsworthy that we tell and listen to these stories over and over again. In presenting them tonight, we hope to put a human face on the complexity of such abstract ideas as riot, racial anger, injustice, justice. We hope the stories might connect us with the ways that injustice and reparation and their legacy can form a sort of thread between generations, from the past into the future and through the present. I'd like to thank MICA's Cultural Expansion Grant Committee and the Office of Cultural Diversity and Intercultural Development for their support in making this event possible. I'd also like to thank the Office of Events for their technical support, especially John, who's up there somewhere, and to Dan Wallace and Errol Weber, who helped out with the slideshow. After the reading, there'll be time for sharing your responses. There will be time for dessert in the lobby, and additional issues of Passenger will be on sale there if you'd like to take home some of these oral histories with you. I have two requests. Please hold your applause until the very end of the reading, and please turn off your cell phones. Now I'd like to welcome Kendra Kapelke, the founding editor of Passenger and director of the MFA in Creative Writing and Publishing Arts at the University of Baltimore. Kendra will speak a little bit about the process of how these oral histories were collected. Thank you very much.